All right. Hi, this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Care Notes with Doug Wilbur. And Doug fell off the face of the earth, and we're going to have to get him back on. Don't know where he went. So we will continue to wait for Doug to join us for Care Notes. There he is. All right, we're letting Doug back in. I have no idea what happened there. We lost you. I introduced you, and you were gone.
Yeah.
Technology, just love it. So yesterday, when we confirmed that we were going to do today's podcast,
Yeah.
You made a suggestion, so I'll let you introduce this suggestion.
Well, what I suggested is I knew that you've just recently gone through your own health issue.
Right.
And for that reason, I wanted to see if it was possible to kind of find out what your experiences were, what happened, first of all, but also your experiences in the healthcare system. Because this is something that we've been talking a lot about over, the last couple of years that we've done this. And, you have had the golden ticket to kind of seeing what goes on the inside of the health system. Right. And I think that it would be really fascinating, at least for the audience, to understand what it is that you went through and maybe things that we should think about, and kind of go from there. So first of all, lay out the groundwork. Okay. What happened to you?
This was 3 weeks ago, and I've been telling my husband for days I was going to go get my car washed. And I said, and I really need to vacuum it out. And he kept saying to me, you can go get your car washed, but I'll go with you on the weekend and we'll vacuum it out. And, I heard that, but it was like, hey, I'm a big girl. I can do this myself. Got my car washed, vacuumed out the driver's side of the car. And at this car wash, they have a vacuum for the driver's side and one for the passenger side. So I remember hanging up the hose on the driver's side. And I remember turning to go get the hose for the passenger side. It's all I remember. I think I saw the ground coming up towards me.
Yeah.
And there I was. And I didn't know my right side was bleeding. I mean, I just scraped that up. But my left leg was so heavy. And I've had that experience before when I broke my femur, that I couldn't lift my leg, I couldn't move it, and any kind of movement was excruciating. Lucky me, the manager or the owner of the car wash was sitting in his office. He actually saw me fall.
So no one else was in the
nobody else was vacuuming. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I was wearing my great Apple Watch that's supposed to say you fell and then call for help. It didn't work.
So
I still love my Apple Watch, but it just didn't work. But anyways, he came out to see what was going on. Very caring gentleman, but all he saw was blood on the pavement. Yeah. And he said, do you know where you're bleeding from? And it was like, I don't care where I'm bleeding from. I can't move my leg. Yeah. So he was kind enough. He did call the paramedics. The paramedics came, and I just said to them, look, I know what's wrong. It's my left femur. I don't care that I have blood streaming down my face. And they said, well, we're going to have to transport you. They asked me where I wanted to go. I told them, got to that hospital. But that hospital right now doesn't have a normal emergency room. And so I was brought in, and they pushed me into a little alcove. Now, picture this. You're in an alcove. You're looking the opposite direction from everything that's happening in this hallway. I have nobody with me. And
Right.
I'm lying there on this bed and I can't move. No buzzer, nothing. So I had my phone and I called and told my husband and I said, if nobody comes to talk to me in the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm calling you again. And you have to call the emergency room and tell them, hey, she's over here.
Right.
So every once in a while, somebody would come over and check on me, but they didn't know what to do with me. They said the report from the paramedics was not complete. And I kept saying, hello, ask me what happened.
Yeah.
I can explain this to you. And it was like, no,
And look,
yeah, like,
just do a quick exam.
right. And it was like, we'll be with you shortly. And then they came over, they asked me about my allergies. They don't put allergy bands on you anymore. They just write it in your chart.
Okay.
So
That's
my
interesting.
first question was, what if I wasn't able to explain it to you? Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
good to have that red band on my hand? And I was told, that's old school. So that's the first thing I didn't like. Second thing. They finally came over and looked at my leg and they said, we're going to send you for an x-ray. They sent me for an x-ray. Luckily, they were able to do it on the gurney because if they would have asked me to move over onto something else, that wasn't going to happen. Then they came and saw me about an hour later and they said, x-ray looks just fine. And it looks like you have a rod and a screw in that leg. And I said, I do. They said, oh, you're going to be fine. I said, why do I have so much pain?
Right.
And they kept asking me about my pain tolerance. And I said, this leg's been bothering me for months, but I've worked, I've gone up and down steps, I've done everything. I said, so my tolerance is pretty high, but right now I can't move my foot. So they asked me to wiggle my toes, which I could. And they were like all excited. I could wiggle my toes.
Yeah.
So I got there about 1:30 in the afternoon. About 6:30, when my husband finally got there, nobody knew who was going to see me next. And my husband kept saying, somebody's got to tell us what to do. And they said, well, we're hoping to release her. And that was the first time I really let them know exactly how I felt. You are not releasing me. I cannot move this leg. You cannot expect my husband to pick me up and carry me. And it was like, well, we'll have to see if we can get you a bed. 10:30 that night, they got me a bed. Again, the nurses had no idea what I was doing up on the floor.
Yeah.
And as I'm having a conversation with them, they were all travel nurses. None are from the hospital. One girl was from Louisiana. They were all wonderful, but they didn't know who to call, what to do, and where to find things. I was so hungry. I just said, can you give me a graham cracker? And she said, well, the cafeteria is closed. I said, like, you don't have snack food here? And she finally found me one packet of a graham cracker.
Right.
So we chose to let my husband stay in the room overnight with me because he realized nobody knows what they're doing. And until we find out what's wrong with me.
Right.
So somehow I slept that night. Now I know what it means to feel like a real invalid because if you can't move, you can't get to the restroom. And if you have an accident, you are dependent on somebody else to take care of you.
Right.
And when you are capable of knowing all this, it's worse when the staff doesn't know what to do. When I have to explain to them, you know, and I started thinking about, at one point I even said to my husband, we have to call Doug. We got to get somebody to the house because they'll know what to do. And one of the nurses overheard me and she said, "Oh, is Doug your doctor?" And I said, "Well, not quite, but he and his staff would know what to do." And I didn't take it any further.
Yeah.
But the next morning, Rich left for work. They told him that they were going to probably take a CAT scan, maybe an MRI, and they were going to have physical therapy come in and get me up on my leg. And it was like, yeah, well, you try that. We'll see what happens. I finally saw the floor doctor. Everything I said to him, Doug, when he repeated to me, it was not what I said.
Yeah.
And I knew there was a language barrier. And so I said, "Is there somebody else who could come in the room while I'm explaining it to you?" He goes, "Oh, I got it. I got it." And
And you're filled with all sorts of confidence at
oh,
this point.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So then they send a social worker in because I'm a Medicare patient.
Mm.
And the social worker wanted to know if I understood my Medicare. I said, "Right now, I could care less. I need you to take care of me." And she said, "Well, this could be a very expensive stay." Now, how do you talk to a patient about that who's in pain? Nobody's told her really what's wrong other than, "Oh, the x-ray looks great." Um, and so every time something like this happened, I was putting it out on Facebook. It was like,
Yeah.
I want the world to know what's going on. So they finally decided to do a CAT scan, no contrast. Oh, and they did a CAT scan on my head because I fell on my head, but that too was without contrast.
Mm.
So that showed nothing. My leg, they think they saw a hairline fracture.
Okay.
So they sent me back up to the room and they said to me, "How long do you think you've had that fracture?" I said, "Well, I just fell. Maybe it just happened. Or I've been having problems with the leg for 3 months. So maybe that's what the problem was."
Could have been earlier. Yeah.
Right. I said, "I don't know." "Well, how often do you fall?" "Not very often." It's like, I mean, I felt like a 2-year-old, the questions they were asking me. And I know some of them were important, but it just didn't feel right.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I got in there on Tuesday night. Now we're up to Wednesday night. "We're going to have the surgeon come in and see you tomorrow." Okay, like, surgeon? What are we talking about here? "Oh, well, he'll be in."
Was it an orthopedic surgeon?
Yeah,
Is that what they
orthopedic
were?
surgeon.
Yeah.
He didn't show up on Wednesday. So they said, "Well, he'll be in tomorrow now on Thursday." So in the meantime, I'm still this invalid lying in bed. Oh, and they put me on um, a, h- a heart diet. Now,
Mm.
let's talk about a heart diet. Eggs twice a day. Um, there was a cream something at night. It's like, I'm not going to eat this stuff. And if you think I have heart problems, please don't feed this to me. I'm so confused how what you're told to do for a certain condition, they do the opposite. So to get this closer to the orthopedic surgeon, he showed up Friday morning
Okay.
and he said, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about it. It's just a hairline crack. The bar is keeping it steady. You know, I'm going to have PT and OT come in here today. They're going to show you what to do. And then your husband can pick you up this evening and take you home." And I said, "I have a better idea. I want to go to rehab." And he goes, "Well, you don't have to." I said, "Well, I do. I can't even roll over in the bed without help and screaming." And he goes, "No, I think you can go home." I said, "But if I go from the hospital to rehab, it'll be covered by Medicare. And I know a rehab center that is very good. I
Mm.
want to go there so that I can get the help I need." He said, "Well, I guess it's your choice, but I'd go home." So I get to the rehab late on Friday night, and the paramedics who took me there were wonderful. They, they had me do things slowly so that I could actually go from the gurney to the bed, which was the
Right.
first time I could do anything like that. They showed me how to sit up. Nobody tried to do that at the hospital. And it was
Wow.
like, in just like an hour, the right people doing the right thing. And I could
Got
also,
you functioning. Yeah.
now I see that I'm recovering. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still in pain, but so
And
on
now you have hope because it's
yeah,
not getting worse. It's getting
is
at
yeah,
least some progress. Yeah.
exactly. I can't as short staff as they were at the rehab. So I knew there were certain things I was just gonna have to wait a little longer for.
Yeah.
But when they came to me, they helped me. They were good. There was no judgment about anything. And then Saturday, of course, there was nobody there for rehab. But they tried to keep me as comfortable as possible. And then on Sunday, they came in from rehab and they did an evaluation. She saw what some of the problem is, and in the upper thigh where the femur is, my whole leg is like tied in knots. And she said to me, "Is it always like this?" And I said, "Yeah, for the most part." She said, "So are you typically in pain?" I said, "No, I'm typically uncomfortable, but now this is pain." And
So
so,
when you say I wanted some
sure,
clarification. When you say it's tied in knots, you mean your muscles are all tight
all
and
tight, and I can feel lumps
yeah,
in the thigh. And
yeah,
I've complained about this ever since my surgery 8 years ago. And it's always been, well, you have to be more active. Well, I am pretty active.
yeah.
I walk up and down steps, I walk around outside. The only thing I don't do is run. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, but it's always been that way. But now it almost felt like I had pebbles in my
Your
in my
legs.
thigh. And
Was
so
it one side or both sides?
just the one, just on the
The
injured
one
side. Yeah,
that you had the surgery on.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
So she was asking me a bunch of questions. She said, "So when it started hurting you 3 or 4 months ago, what did they tell you?" I said, "Well, they told me it probably was my osteoporosis." And she said, "Well, yeah, but you wouldn't have knots in your leg." I said,
Hmm.
"Well, I understand that, but that's what they told me. And they told me, to take aspirin and ibuprofen, which kills my stomach. And so I decide, do I want an upset stomach or do I want my leg to feel better today?" Um, so on that Monday, I went into physical therapy and they came to my room with a walker and a wheelchair. And they said, "You're going to start with the walker."
Yeah.
And my eyes just filled up with tears. It was like, "Oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this." But they were so gentle and
Mm.
so understanding. And they put a belt around me so that they were holding on to me. I wasn't going to
Right. Yeah.
fall. Um, and they really only expected me to walk to the door from the bed.
Yeah.
And I walked halfway down the hall and I really was stopping to take a breath. And they said, "Okay, get in the wheelchair." And we argued for about 30 seconds. And I got in the wheelchair. But then they had me moving the leg. They had me riding a bike, which was interesting. On the bike, there was no pain.
Mm. Yeah.
And they told me I had, 15 minutes. And it was like, "Can I go 20? Because it really feels good." And they said, "Yeah, because you're not hurting it."
Right.
Um, and then I did other exercises. And then they said, "No, we're going to let you go back to your room and take a break. We're going to come back and get you this afternoon. And um, we're going to use the walker again, but I'll always have the wheelchair there if you need it." And that afternoon, I made it down to the rehab.
Yeah.
And it was like somebody just had to give me that confidence and show me that, yes, we know there's pain, but we can
Right.
show you how to reduce it. Um, and by Tuesday, the second day, I didn't need them to help me get out of bed with the walker. I was totally on my own.
So this is about a week after
Right,
everything else happened. Okay.
right,
When things started. One of the things that I often say is that, when you hit a certain age, what oftentimes happens is in the hospital they have a couple big things that they want to avoid, and one of the things is they want to avoid you falling.
right,
So they do all sorts of things so that you don't fall. Okay, so they'd rather have you soil your, uh, um, like use a adult diaper
right,
in
right.
bed
Yep,
rather than to get up and fall, and they suffer the issues and liabilities around that.
right.
So, and because of staffing and other things, people tend to spend a lot of time in bed in the hospital. Well, you lose, as it sounds like you were doing, you lost confidence.
Oh,
It,
absolutely.
you are more sore when you're actually standing on that thing, because all I know is if I sit on the couch for a long time and get up, I'm stiffer than if I'd been moving during that.
Exactly.
So you kind of aggravate that over, say, a 24-hour period, and your confidence goes down even lower when you step on it, because it's like, I can't, it hurts, I
Right.
can't do this kind of a thing. And then it sounds like the other component, and I'm just unpacking what you're saying, is that no one's showed you it could be done.
Well, and that was it. I mean, when
Yeah.
these paramedics came to transfer me, the first thing I said was, "Hey guys, you're going to have to move me. I
Hmm.
don't know how to move." And this really young guy looked at me and he said, "Well, we'll do that." But they actually had me doing it without me realizing it at first. And
Yeah.
once I got on, the gurney, I said to them, "I can't thank you enough." And he goes, "For what?" I said, "You made me do some of the work."
Yeah.
And I just looked over at the bed and I said, "See how flat the bed is?" They wanted me lying flat. They didn't want my head up.
Right.
And nobody could explain to me why. And it was like, I even went back in the reports that I've seen online, and it's like, there's no reason why I had to be flat on my back for 4 days. But I understand what you're saying. They don't have the staff to make sure I don't fall. And so it's
Right.
easier
But
to
they
keep
don't
me.
want people getting out of bed, going to the bathroom and falling again,
Yep.
hitting their head and things like that. So I'm not, there's it's just kind of the system in place and the structure, and that creates other issues.
Right.
So they may be preventing one issue and creating other issues. And it just is kind of the nature of how we are structured in the hospital systems right now, and also how they're kind of doing some things that has the law of unintended consequences.
Well,
There are other things that come off of that.
what I
Because
also, yeah,
oh,
what I
well, I was
also,
going to
yeah, go
say,
ahead.
I'm sorry, that they're worried about your head as well. Like, what happened? What was this fainting that
Right.
happened, or passing out? What was behind that? And so that triggers a whole bunch of things. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, that's fine. But what I found interesting at the rehab, um, there were at least 4 or 5 people that are working there that I remembered from 8 years ago.
hmm, yeah,
Like, we can't keep people in our hospital system, but a good care center or a good home care center has people that stay with them. Okay. And it was, it just made me feel so good. This one aide came in and she looked at me and she said, "Were you here before? Did you have short, dark hair?" And I said, "Yes." And I recognized her right away. And she said, "And you were in the other wing, right?" And I said, "Yes."
Oh,
And she said,
pretty good. Yeah.
"Yeah." And she remembered everything about me. And then she said, "Tomorrow, you're going to see," and I can't remember the other person's name, but you're going to see her tomorrow. She's been here. And she walked in and she goes, "Oh my God, what'd you do to yourself now?" Um, but there was a camaraderie there. There were people that they knew where to find things, and yet they are short staff, but they admit it and they tell you, okay, we're going to do our best to answer your call button when you ring. You
Hmm.
just might have to wait a few extra minutes. Now that was on the weekend. During the week, there was plenty of staff around.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
and they all sort of cover for each other. So even the PT staff, if somebody's ringing their buzzer and there's not a nurse or an aide to go, they'll at least go acknowledge the person. And if it's something they can help with, they do. I mean, what a concept in this world, you know? Um, and so I can't give them enough praise. In fact, in continuing my PT, I decided I'm going there.
Oh,
Why?
good.
Because they already know me. I don't have to somebody reevaluate me. Um, I have confidence in what they're doing.
Right.
So, you know, what a difference, and it just saddens me that if we have this shortage, why is it that we can hire people from other states to come be nurses and doctors here, and our
Right.
nurses and doctors are going somewhere else?
Yeah, they're going to the other states.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
it's a perverse incentive because unfortunately, again, the law of unintended consequences. During COVID, there was uh, this need, and so they had the traveling nurses, had traveling doctors, and they offered obscene amounts of money. Even aides, they were
Right.
offered
Yep.
obscene amount of money, and so it's a created problem. If everybody went back to where they were before, we wouldn't have the issue that we do. But now it's a self-perpetuating
Right.
situation where our folks. You said there was someone from what state? Where was it?
Louisiana.
Yeah, so the person from Cleveland is probably in
Right.
Louisiana.
Well, I even asked her and she said um she got her degree during COVID and nobody would use her as a nurse, even though that
Mm,
was her degree. And so the only job she could get was as an aide, and but not in Louisiana. She went to Texas as an aide, and she said, "I was getting paid so well that I wasn't sure I wanted to even become, use my nursing degree." And
right.
I
Yeah.
said, "This just doesn't make sense. There have to be people in our cities
Right.
that maybe if you just pay them a little bit more." I said, "Because if they're paying your housing and they're paying you a salary, that's a lot more than somebody who lives in the same city."
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, it is happened, and it's just perpetuated, and we've created, an awful monster, and it's beginning to settle down and um, slowly coming back, but it's still bad. It still is like that was your experience.
Right.
Everybody was from somewhere else, and what the problem is they don't know the hospital. They don't know the people. They don't know where things are in the hospital. So you get confusion with that. Whereas if you had someone who'd been there, like at that facility, and they'd been there at least 8 years, if that was
Right.
the last time you had been in there, you had a very different experience with that. So obviously the $1 million question is, what happened? How did all of the, I mean, it sounds like you don't have any answers.
So we still don't have a clear-cut answer. We're treating my leg for the fall, for the injury, not necessarily the hairline fracture, that it's bruised and everything else.
Now, is it still weak?
I'm sorry, what?
Your leg, is it still weak?
Still weak,
Okay.
but I'm now using a cane, and in the house, as of today, I'm shuffling around without the cane. I mean, it's somewhere close by, and I even still have a walker upstairs near the bedroom that if in the middle of the night I just felt like I couldn't make it. But I can walk, but I'm walking with a very distinctive limp. And that's their biggest concern, is that they don't want me to heal and keep walking with a limp. So I'm go to physical therapy this week. I went Monday, I go again Friday. Next week I'll go 3 days, and they're going to do some stretching of the leg.
Yeah.
And they've already warned me it's going to be painful. Okay. And you can put a towel in your mouth and bite down on it, but we've got to do that because of the muscles and the tendons are just so tight, and that's where they think the pain is really coming from.
Wow.
So
Now,
know,
with the passing out part that you originally had, do you think that you that you felt faint and went down,
no,
or did you go down
yeah,
because you hit your head?
yeah, and I don't think I was out that long.
Yeah.
And according to the manager there. So, like I said, I remember hanging it up
Yeah.
and going around towards the front of my car.
And you
And
don't
then
feel lightheaded or anything
no,
like that?
and,
Yeah.
and I was really in a good headspace that day, which is funny, it's
Yeah.
like I did an errand for my husband first, and it was like, I'm only going to do one show this afternoon. So, hey, I've got the rest of most of the afternoon off. And so I was really feeling like very positive.
Yeah.
Now, number one, for all of you listening, I was wearing flip flops. I should not have been. I know that. I've gotten rid of all my flip flops. I will never wear them again.
You
So my
burned
husband,
them, right?
yeah. And I've tripped, using them, not falling, but and my husband, every time that would happen, he'd say, "Why do you wear those?" And it's like, well, they're fashionable. Well, you know what? I prefer having legs that work.
Right.
So it could have been that. It could have been the gravel on, on the ground. Maybe I was moving too quickly. Maybe I
Right.
wasn't paying as much attention as I thought. And that was another thing one of the doctors at the hospital said. So on the second day when I'm complaining about, I don't want to be bedridden. I need you guys to figure out what I can do. And he said, honey, you're 73 years old. Enjoy this time. No, you don't talk to me that way. I mean, I have a very active life. Okay. And if you wanted to say, hey, you shouldn't be wearing your flip flops, that I could have accepted. But don't tell me because of my age that, and when I would tell them what I do, they'd go, well, why? Don't you believe in retirement? It's like, I don't know what world you people are in, but I'm doing what I want to do. And I want to get out of this bed.
Right. So, the question that I have, obviously, I needed to ask that question because it was like
Right.
it was hanging there. What actually happened? And I know a lot of times, the issue is sometimes they just don't know.
Right.
And sometimes that's the answer. And it's, but but the other thing is, I guess if there were lessons to be learned other than not wear flip-flops, you know, if there's lessons to be learned in the healthcare system, or, you know, personally, whatever, tell me what you think that is, because, life is about learning, and what can we learn from this experience? Because unfortunately, you are in the middle of the things we talk
Right.
about all the time.
Well, I've been a contract worker on and off now for 30 years. So I've
Mm,
gone into a corporation where they wanted me to do training or write training protocols and things like that. And I don't walk in saying, oh, I don't know anything, or I don't know what. First thing I do when I walk in is, where's the restroom? Do you have a break room? What are your hours? The basics, so that when I'm working with people, I don't look like an idiot. Okay.
right.
And
Yeah.
those are the basics. And so I think the nurses and the doctors who, are traveling and they're maybe only here for a week, maybe they're here for 6 months, I don't know. But there's certain things that you're going to need for your patients. You need to
Yeah.
know, where are those things. If you don't have the key for the medication, who does? How do
Hmm.
you get medication for an individual? That was one thing. The first night they said, it says here we're supposed to give you morphine, but we don't have access to it.
Mm.
And it was like, could you call the pharmacy? Well, yeah, we could, but they were squabbling about what they had to do. And I think it's because they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be this nice patient, well, as soon as you can get it for me, I'll be really happy. Um, but those are the things I think you have to, as a traveling person, you have to go in and ask all the questions that you can think of that you're going to need for your patients.
Yeah.
Don't tell your patient you're a temporary person there, because now I've lost confidence in you. You may be the nicest person, but I don't have confidence. Um, and we got to pay people to be there. And I
Mm.
think that's the biggest problem. I don't care what hospital it is. I think the guys at top, they want to make their money. And so where do they make the cuts? Well, they're making it, and it's affecting the patients, and it's affecting the staff not wanting to stay there long term
Mhm.
and burning out.
Mhm.
Um, when I got to rehab, I will tell you this, the one aide who recognized me right away. She's always smiling. She's always,
Yeah.
I'll take care of things. But she and I had a long talk on my last day, and she said, Karen, I do that because it's my job.
Right.
Inside, I am angry that I can't find the adult diapers for the person in the next room. I am upset that
Mm.
my food tray was always wrong, and she'd
Right.
bring it to me and she'd say, I'll get you the right food. And it'd be like, she said, but I'm not going to come in here and say, hey, I'm sorry, they gave me the wrong food for you, but this is all you get.
Right. Yeah.
But it's hard to do that, because if your company isn't providing you with all the right stuff, you are going to have burnout. And there
Mm.
was another woman there who really, really nice, but I could tell she was burned out. She'd come in my room when everything finally quieted down, and she'd say, can I just sit here and watch TV with you for a few minutes?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
she needed that downtime. And she knew that I'm not going to, you told me that, I'm not going to have a conversation with you. Yeah, just sit there. And she
Right.
would. And then, but how many people in rehab are like me? And sadly, what I saw in rehab are a lot of people who are alone. They don't
Yeah.
have family coming to visit. And they're dependent on the staff.
Yeah. Well, and that was that there, you had said something before, and that was one of the takeaways that I got from what you had said, and something that I've advocated for a long time, which is that if you're in a hospital or if you're in a facility, and if you're in any way debilitated, you need an advocate. You need someone who is there that is going to say, hey, she's sitting in the corner and you guys have, I think forgotten about
Yep.
what's going on, because I have often said there's nothing more terrifying than an older person in a facility without an advocate, without
Absolutely.
someone there to say, wave down and say, there's a problem here, or to listen when the doctor is explaining something, because they'll go bum, 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 bum. And if someone has any type of cognitive issues, or if they're on a medicine that makes them groggy,
Right.
whatever, they're not going to remember what those points were that the doctor said, or the things that happen, let alone necessarily making good judgments at that point in time. And having a second set of ears at the very least is going to be very helpful in being able to navigate. We can say that with, it's also really clear, Cleveland hospital systems are literally among the best in the world. I mean, all of them
Right.
are literally among the best in the world. And if we're having this issue here, think about the hospitals around the country that are lesser hospitals and the issues that they're having. Obviously, we can't change the world, but we can call attention to at least that, because of the way we're at now, you have to have an advocate.
Right.
You have to have someone there for you, or for the person that is loved.
It's interesting because that first day I told my husband, just work, come in after work.
Yeah.
I didn't think of needing him to be there. But once he got there, it was like, I was so glad you're here. Well, he was so exhausted, but also frustrated that nobody could give him any information, that instead of being my advocate initially, he just totally withdrew, and there I
Mm,
am lying, and has his chair next to me. It wasn't until we got to the room that he realized what I had gone through. And he said to the nurse, I know there's a couch here. Are you going to kick me out if I'm sleeping on it? And she was so grateful he wanted to be there.
oh yeah.
And, how many pillows do you want? How many blankets do you want? And I was glad, because in the middle of the night, a new aide came in to do something, and he jumped up to find out, what are you doing?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't anything terrible. She was doing what she had to, but I then appreciated it. And then he kept trying to call the house doctor to find out what was going on with me.
Yeah.
And he only takes calls like for an hour every day. And it's like, seriously? Like, you
Mm,
have, I think my husband said there were 15 of us on the floor. So if you only take calls for an hour, who are you talking to?
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's, I also, kind of listening to what you said, and maybe, wrapping it up is um, just understanding that the idea of longevity does make a difference. The fact that those aides, first of all, they care because they're there, and
Right.
you can just hear from how you describe them. The fact that they remember a patient, from all those years, it probably says something about you, but it also says a lot about them as well.
Sure.
And But that consistency is really a tale of two cities. In the hospital, you were not hearing the consistency,
Right.
Travel, this and that. There, you had a very different experience. But that idea of taking time with someone, being able to work with them where they were at, look at the difference that had with you.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, the way you responded to the one versus the other was night and day, and
Yep.
it's because they took the time that you needed. They heard you, and then they acted on that. And there's definitely lessons to be learned for the healthcare system in all of that. And I think hopefully people will walk away if especially if you're in healthcare and say, what can I do to make some of that happen? I know we do, but that people will. So
Oh,
anyway, thank you for sharing your story.
sure, no
I'm
problem.
sorry. I'm sorry that you have a story to share. But
And you know what? It's okay. It's making me stronger and better for it. And if I can just help one person, that to me means that uh, I've done my job. And
yeah,
I know you and I talk about home care versus, you know, um, facility care. And all I can say is all I know is about this facility. I know how good they are. Um, if they had told me I had to go to another facility, I'm not sure I would have gone because just because I didn't know it and I wanted to be where I could be the most comfortable.
well,
So,
and just as a clarification, I am a huge advocate of rehab. I think rehab is where facilities are kind of, that's where they shine. You have equipment there, and have long felt like that is the place for the facility part of it. I mean, the biggest place
right.
for it because it is appropriate. And frankly, I think we need to pour lots of money into that, like a Medicare standpoint, into that rehab end of things and get people. As a matter of fact, one of the most disturbing things I find is that some of the advantage plans, especially, seem to be pushing people out of the facilities
Oh,
faster than in the past. And my view for that is that this is where we need to get people strong so that they're safe at home.
right. And
You
I
know,
will tell you, so on day 2, somebody did come in from the insurance to talk to me.
yeah,
And she told me, she said, "You have a minimum of 28 days here.
mm,
Don't rush home until you are ready. And if you
mhm,
need more than the 28, they're going to contact us and let us know." And I just looked at her and I said, I hope to be here. I hope to be leaving by Friday. And
mhm.
she looked at me and she said, "But you just started." And I said, "I know, but I know myself. I know what I'll do. But if I'm not ready on Friday, I'll stay."
Yeah,
But so obviously I do have a good plan. And I was amazed at that. And that made me good to hear this insurance person is telling me, take care of yourself first. So,
right, yeah, because that's where the whole idea of rehab is to get someone ready so that they have the best chances of doing well at home. and
exactly.
and isn't that the goal, so that we can live life and do things and so yeah, no, I'm a big advocate. So anyway,
Well,
well, thank you for
you're
sharing.
welcome.
Yeah.
And hopefully next month we can come up with something a little cheerier to talk about. Have a great day. Bye bye
Thanks. Take
now.
care. Bye bye.